about those things, but I do feel it is absolutely essential to have all of this in writing, and that is what I was hearing tonight when Dr. Kelly was talking, was fuzziness in terms of the language, that we have to develop this. And so I would really encourage you to get this in writing and document it and be very clear and transparent to families in Malibu. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Todd Doyle, there you are.
Hello. I have 4 kids in the district in Malibu, and I'd like to talk a little bit about the permits and how we got here and why I think there's so many people here. The permit issue was presented to me the first time as a budget reduction strategy. I don't think that should ever be a case. Getting rid of kids should never be a budget reduction strategy. I think we can do better than that. Plus, you guys have talked about declining enrollment. If enrollment is declining, I don't think there's a necessity for removing kids from your schools. You're going to have that happen whether you like it or not, especially in Malibu. Malibu is projected to have a much smaller size classes as we progress forward, whether you keep permits or not. I applaud you for some of the changes you've made tonight. I think they look very, very good, but I question why we need to make changes at all. Also, I think the fact that this was introduced as a budget reduction strategy and some of the issues that we've had in Malibu before speak to an eroding trust. Any policy is only as good as its application or as good as how you review it the next year. Are we back here next year having the same discussion? Do you still view our children as a reduction strategy? Clearly, we heard the budget talks tonight. There's a lot of places I could cut. I'm not a consultant, but I'll offer my fees for free because you're paying way too much. And I can tell you where some of those cuts might occur. I think there's a lot of ways that we can make this work out. I understand you're hiring 2 pathway directors for project-based learning. Project-based learning wasn't discussed in the same fashion as some of these permit issues, but you're talking about the education of our kids none the same. It's very expensive. I think it's awesome. But in the face of the teachers and all the people that are here, it seems a little out of line. I'd like to express my support for the teachers, and I hope you guys make a great decision.
Thank you. Ann Russell Shergo, there you are, and Tony Dorn.
Hi, I'm Ann Russell Shargot. I'm a parent of 3 children residing in district and attending Malibu schools. I'm here to ask the board to consider feedback to the proposed new language for BP and AR 5117 as it was posted on 214. There was, thank you for handing those out. There's a handout that goes with that. So thank you for making some modifications since last meeting, but I was responding to what was posted on 214 online. So I urge you to please consider some of the notes. You may think that tonight's discussion is about a lack of money. I would argue the core issue is one of double standards and double speak. The double standard exists in the performance expectations of our teachers versus the performance expectations for district administrative staff. These are the same people whose missteps have cost additional millions in expensive legal and PR contract spending, and whose ill-advised actions resulted in the seizing of millions of dollars by the state. The district will never perform properly unless it shows the leadership to make difficult decisions about cutting staff from top down. It's time to face the truth about underperforming, incapable, or redundant personnel on top, to more quickly settle lawsuits and send lawyers home, and to have the courage to go forward without full-time handholding by PR professionals. The doublespeak is repeating the promise of 21st century learning while simultaneously recommending restricting permits and calling into question the need for the dollar amount granted in Measure M. We need our permits and our teachers in Malibu to avoid extinction. Please vote to keep inter-district permit students, including foreign exchange students who bring world views. Those were on the chopping block. Then be brave enough to demand the hiring of an outside firm to provide non-conflicted financial advice instead of relying on staff who are unlikely to recommend firing themselves. Our kids, teachers, and Malibu community should not be punished for the trained incapacities and entrenched interests on top. Thank you so much.
Thank you. The last speaker is Tony Dorn. Is Tony Dorn here? Okay, that concludes the public hearing portion on this item. And well, we have to conclude our discussion or have our discussion and give direction. And then we'll have to have a vote to do this, but we moved the wrong item up. But I do want to assure all of you teachers who are here that the next item will be the one you want to speak on anyway. We'll move the wrong one up because we misunderstood.
We've gone through a lot of clarifying already, so does anybody want to speak to the staff recommendation and pathways forward? Maria?
Yes, I think the only thing, I mean, I think it's great, and just to clarify, for the Malibu residents, thank you for those that came to the meeting the last time around and presented, and the map that you showed us, because for many of us, I was totally unaware of many of the families that lived around just right outside the boundaries of Malibu proper, the city. And I understand. So for me, I think the fact that you showed, and I think we might have done a little bit of research on that we went back and we allowed the opportunity for at least for the Malibu schools to allow all those other families to come back. And also you made great points about the declining enrollment, especially there, so that we do need students there, in other words, to have a full, with a proper educational programming there, you know. But one of the other things I have is when we talk about the recommended areas, they talk about city employees, right? No, but working within the Santa Monica Malibu Unified School boundaries. So one thing is working, and for some people that I know that we had in Malibu, because I was there in another meeting last week, is that people have businesses, so they're business owners. So I think we need to make that distinction between that number 5 priority include not just the employees working within the businesses in the area, but also owners of businesses. Or is that understood? I mean, that's what I'm asking for clarification. For number 5, the recommended priority 5.
I don't know that we've ever been faced with that question. If someone owns a business in Malibu or even in Santa Monica, they're trying to enter the district on an inter-district permit, they're going to indicate that they're working within the boundaries.
Oh, okay. All right.
I wouldn't, and we wouldn't necessarily say, well, have you? Yeah,
We wouldn't make that distinction.
No, we
right?
wouldn't.
I know that because a lot of people, I know that a lot of
Because what we do is, when they
understood.
submit their application, they provide us proof of working within the boundaries. A letter from employee, a copy of a pay stub, something of that nature that has an address within the district boundaries. So they're
business
required to
license or
put
something, yeah.
documentation that substantiates their working within the boundaries. If the business address is within Santa Monica, Malibu, and that's what they provide us documentation from that, we're going to accept that on its face.
Okay, great. The other one is just more clarification in terms of Edison. Because I know in the prior one, it said it would continue to 8th grade. But my whole thing is if we're going to support dual immersion, then I think it has to be that we have to include the permit to follow them all the way to 12th grade. And I know that what you're saying, you're indicating in here in terms of the initial, you're clarifying the initial approval of the permit because there has to be a 50-50 split in terms of English and Spanish speakers, and sometimes within the district we don't have the per se Spanish speakers. But I think that we still have to make sure that we clarify that so that those kids, because right now as it reads, come high school, it doesn't say that they're actually still can remain in the district. So we need to include it that they're going to be here till
You're saying instead of K-8, K-12?
K-12, yes.
Yeah, and just know that the K-8 has been existing policy for very long.
Yes, so now I just want to clean it up and say K-12.
Okay, you want to say K-12.
K-12.
TJ, Lori, Oscar, Ralph.
John, can I ask a question, just a clarifying question from you before I make my comments, because it'll inform what I say. Sadly, I was not here at the meeting when this was first discussed. And forgive me, I have not, to my colleagues, I did not go and watch the video. I'm sorry. Was there a depth as to how this first came to us? I mean, you must have discussed that, right, in the sense of how this was first considered as budget reduction?
The beginning, okay, so the beginning, we should turn some microphones off. So we were facing a significant budget crisis that if we did not address in 2 years, we would be bankrupt. That was the reality of it. So we said, we need to do an examination of everything in our district. And part of what that is, as we've become a basic aid district, a community-funded district, we have an obligation to look at permits. Because while we don't want to make any changes, revenue does not follow students anymore. So yes, as the gentleman said, this started as a budgetary decision. Yes, this was a decision as we looked at everything in our budget, everything in our district, and how that works.
That helps.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that was the genesis.
Thank you. So I just want to say first, I support the recommendations from staff. I'd already said that. I would echo Maria, and I think Oscar's comments also are questions for staff to consider the through 12th grade for Edison, even though I think you said that maybe that hasn't been the past question. A lot has been said. Forgive me if I'm not remembering correctly. I guess what I want to just use my moment to speak on this as a discussion, say that this is going to be tough for our communities moving forward. And I heard many of the speakers say, or suggest to fix it and leave it. But that's not the way we work, right? And that we continually, when we do our jobs well, which I think we do a lot of the time, I mean that as a district, we review our workings and we are committed to continual improvement. And so I think for maybe a lot of folks, they might not realize that we look at permits and our priorities every single year. So it's at a particular time on the calendar that we actually get this and we look at it. And I think that this informs what Dr. Kelly and senior staff does with regards to letting the community know what we have a possibility. I also think that we should be real with the community and say that there are those who've come before us and have been faced with becoming a community aid. I think we're using community funded, right, basic aid school district like Beverly Hills, where at first blush there's a draconian response and there's an elimination of all permits for the purpose of making those reductions of those savings because funding doesn't follow the student any longer. I think the community needs to know that that's not our political sensibilities and that we need to say it over and over again. And I'm interested, I don't know how we crack that nut because John and Craig both, I think, made it abundantly clear, but I think even those who came and spoke to this, they didn't hear or they felt they still had to make that message or they don't trust us. And I understand that too about not trusting government in all moments. But I think the community needs to know that our political sensibilities are not those of others who have eliminated permits across the board. We have some tough decisions to make as we get further and further or deeper and deeper into to basic aid and to community as a community-funded school district. We have, I think, the rationale, Dr. Kelly, that you put there in the particulars, the district employee, of course. We know we've had other conversations from this dais that we are very concerned about retaining, acquiring and retaining the finest teachers we can in the district, as well as support staff. And we understand that the city gives us a ton of support, and we want to make sure that the persons who are working for the city are able to send their children here, as is the same with the college. But then I have to tell you, I hadn't thought about what Oscar had said. I think the way that Oscar was putting together, why are we having it as a break of the three, but just not anybody, or just having one category working within our boundaries, and then, of course, the very moving comments by some of the parents from Malibu who work there in the service agency, particularly the one woman who spoke. So I guess I want to say I support the recommendation, and we never thought about balancing the budget on kids. In fact, we wanted to make sure from the moment that this was placed on our agenda that we were saying that we weren't trying to push anybody out. That's important. But we have to be real with the community. As we get further and further down the road, we will be forced to revisit this again and again to see how this is going to work. So I just don't want folks to think that, oh, they said one thing. I think one of the comments, one person said, you say one thing, you do another. I can't remember the exact way that he, she, they said it, but I just want to be real and say this is going to come back to us annually. And as all of us get a better footing as a basic aid or a community-funded school district, we're going to have some tough decisions here to make pertaining to, one, the budget, but also with regards to what it means to be basic aid and permits. Thank you for your hard work. I know that you did a lot of work in hearing the persons who spoke before. I know my colleague to my left was really happy to see the number 9. He said, "Where is that?" And I think that last thing I'll say, forgive me for being so long-winded, is that maybe the focus is on the kids, of course, but the viability of programs, whether it's Edison, whether it's the programs and the offerings that we give or that we provide. We don't give, we provide in Malibu. And what that young person said, they mentioned about the orchestra. Craig and I mentioned, oh my gosh, we hadn't even thought necessarily about the viability of what it might mean for the band or the orchestra. So I think as these conversations continue, as we will revisit this in the future, that maybe we include some of those data points as well as to how those particular programs at particular school sites. And then John has been really good at making sure that we got information. I suspect you mentioned this 2 weeks ago about providing for socioeconomic diversity in our communities. Again, to that political sensibility of all of us, every one of us on this dais, for diversity in our community. The law doesn't allow us to do race and ethnicity as diversity, but it sure as heck does allow us to focus on SED, right? So thank you. And thank you.
Great, thank you, Richard. Lori, Oscar, Ralph.
I'm going to try not to repeat too much what John and Richard just said, because that is part of the point I want to make. I am fine, I'm fine with the proposals in the staff report, and I'm open about the issue that Oscar raised, because I raised it myself with Mark earlier, exactly the way you did, because all of these people work in the boundaries of the district, whoever they work for. So I'm open on that. I decided not to push it because historically we have separated city employees and SMC employees, and I think the thinking was that that's because the institutions are kind of our partners. But as to the people who are applying for permits, really, they're really no different than the person who works at 7-Eleven or owns their own business or whatever. So I'm open on that one. I want us to figure out how we go forward and communicate better about why this arises as a budget issue. And I'm not going to attempt to do it tonight because I can't do it any better than you already did. But it's very involved, and I guess I just want to communicate to people that over these last 2 meetings, I have been incredibly appreciative of the points people are raising and the legitimacy and the value of most of them. And yes, that we need, especially in Malibu, we need higher enrollment that takes the form of admitting permit students to keep our programs vibrant and viable. But what I think our community does need to understand is the only reason we're talking about this, because believe me, none of us want to be doing this. We want to keep all those students who have come here on permit and their families. We want them to all sound like the young woman who's graduating from Samo High who talked about her experiences here. We do have a wonderful district, and that's thanks to many of the people who have been sitting here patiently all night long. But now that we are funded in a different way than we were before, the reality is we do not receive money according to how many students we have. And so it changes the way you have to look at budgeting. And yet we are a community that does have a set of values that really do govern us, that keep us from making what in sometimes might be better fiscal decisions, because they're too cruel and they're not things we believe in. But it is a fact that when Beverly Hills became community funded or basic aid, they immediately kicked out all of their permit students. Huntington Beach is currently, I think, engaged in a similar thing. They are kicking out, I don't know if that's the best word for it or expression, but they're eliminating permits of current permit holders. And it's for the same reason that we're even discussing this, though we are trying to say, hey, we're not gonna do that. If you're already here, you're our student, and we're not gonna do anything about that, even though it would save us money. But the reason we're doing this is, as Richard was trying to say, isn't gonna go away right away. We are gonna have to revisit it in the future, because if we continue to add the same number of students year after year after year, we won't, because of the way we're funded, at least right now, be able to afford that or afford, frankly, raises for employees here. Because if you keep everything status quo, given the way we're now funded, we aren't going to increase at a high enough rate to do all that. So there's a lot of conflicting values involved here, but the values that don't hold that don't hold water for us, or that we don't care about our students or our teachers, we do. That's precisely the reason we have to talk about this. So I do want to thank everyone who's come to speak on this, because I really see how important it is, and as I said, I think the reasoning of most people is completely sound, but for the cost, and people need to start to understand that so that we can have this conversation with you all and with people in the future. So I think I'll leave it at that, but it's a really hard one, and the communication with people outside of the people here and the people who work in the district office is really important, so that people understand why we even talk about these things. So that's something we have to work on.
Oscar Ralph Craig.
I won't repeat what's already been stated, but I think we should consider having a diversity of employees, being eligible, and I know there's priorities and so forth, and for sure, if you work in the school district, I support that as a priority, but after that, I think we should have a little bit of...
I'm sorry, Oscar, you said diversity of employees. Did you mean students, or did you mean employees?
No, employees that work within the boundaries.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I misunderstood.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So just being a little bit more open on that, so that we don't just have just the three categories of, city and SMC and so forth. The other issue is, I appreciate that if you lose housing, the policy, we worked on this a long time ago, as the Ellis Act was taking hold, and I think it's going to continue to take hold in our community, where students lose housing, they're evicted, right, because of the Ellis Act. So we have language in this policy. The staff recommendation still protects those students. We do have this problem of homelessness, people losing housing. So it's not because of the Ellis Act, but just for whatever other reason that you lose housing. In the city, we should have include that as well. So if someone loses, we shouldn't punish the student because something happened financially with the parents. If we have someone that's currently in the school district, and someone loses housing because of homelessness, for example, we should be considerate of that. And I think there's about 75 students in our school district right now that I think are categorized in that category, right? I mean, experiencing homelessness, is that accurate?
Yeah, and students who involuntarily lose housing and become homeless are protected under the McKinney-Vento Act.
Oh, good.
And so
Yes,
they're
I
able
forgot
to
about
stay
that.
enrolled. They don't even have to get a permit release, because the law allows them to stay in the school.
Great, and that's a state law, right?
It's a federal law.
Federal law,
Yeah.
okay, great. I forgot about that, so thank you for that, Mark, because that was something that was on my mind. I'm glad that those students have those protections. And then in terms of how we verify, we're saying that every year, someone has to turn in proof of employment. Is that the recommendation on the policy?
That's the recommendation.
So it's an
At present, every year they do complete a one-page verification of continuing enrollment.
Okay.
And really what they're stating is that they continue to be here, that they plan to come back, all of that. What we're adding to this is asking them to provide that verification of employment that, again, they may have changed employment but still be employed within the boundaries, but we are asking for them to do that. At present, you may have someone who was admitted and 3 weeks later, they're no longer employed within the boundaries or even with the district, and we don't verify that at all. We don't do anything with that. We're adding that as part of the process because that's how we admitted them in the first place.
So one thing that I don't support is if a parent loses employment, you know, they were within our boundary, they lose employment, then that student would lose their permit. And I would hope that we would allow those students to finish their education if they want to. I mean, I know sometimes parents might have to move far out, and that will just make it impossible for them to get over here. But if a student says, you know, they want to continue, we should allow that. That's my support on that, and I hope the board would support that policy, keeping that for those students.
Great, thank you, Oscar. Ralph and Craig.
So Mark, I want to ask you some questions because I want everybody, all of us, including myself first, about the real clarity of what the changes are. About the clarity of what the changes are. Because I mean, I still do have some questions. Well, let me ask you this question. Under the way you're changing it, do you expect the number of permit students that we will have to be different next year?
Yes, because we're at least in part eliminating the opportunity category. The other thing that's a factor here is the space availability. So in the recent years, space availability has also done a slight curve to the number of admitted students on permit. And I'll give you an example. At John Adams and Lincoln, they just have not had the space in 6th grade to take very many new permits at all, where in prior years they were much more robust with that. But in the last, I think, 3 years, they've been able to take 1 or 2, that's it. So that part of it will dictate it. What we don't do is we don't add staffing to accommodate additional permit students.
That's understood, but that's why I asked about the caps, because if they haven't met the caps, I don't know if I want to make sure that people understand that we will continue to accept, permits. The caps was a way to sort of set a comfortable number, because if there are none, 2 things might happen. People say, well, how do we even know if there's room of any kind? So it gives people some sense that, that we're going to accept some people. And number 2, I don't know if somebody's going to come and try to game the system all of a sudden. I know that it's the number of seats. And so that's where that issue is important. Are we still, as a district, going to say, we can have 30 kids in the classroom, but this class, we have classrooms that have 28. Are we still going to, if people I think give us bona fide permit applications, we will still fill those seats?
So operationally, one of the things we take input from the principals on this. And we have access to the numbers, so we can look up and say, principals, I already have 30 kids in that class. Oh, you don't? You have 25. I can see them right here. We know that. We can look at that ourselves. But operationally, we don't tell the principals, you must hit your space. We always need to be mindful that we need to leave room for resident students. I'll give you a classic example. Rogers, for whatever reason, families oftentimes enroll in August rather than in the spring. So even though on paper they may have a lot of space, we are hesitant to start adding permit students on that until they have reopened for enrollment in August and then started getting the resident families in there. I think that we haven't, those numbers were in the back of the mind, but they were always controlled. If the board wants us to put them back in, we could certainly do that. but it really wasn't operationally practical. I mean, it wasn't necessary. It wasn't a guiding factor. We also don't want our schools to just fill every blank spot because it's a dynamic process. We have people apply for the spring, and Mrs. Brown and her staff are constantly getting calls. When am I going to know? When am I going to know? Honestly, for most places, Malibu's a little different. We don't really know until the schools, the elementary schools in particular, open up for enrollment in August, and then that's when they're getting a lot of new enrollees. They're also getting some checkouts, families who were intending to enroll who are no longer going to enroll. So it isn't up until really the start of school and sometimes after. We always say your best chance oftentimes is 2 days in, 3 days into the start of school. I don't know if I answered your question, but.
Well, yes and no. I mean, I understand all that. That's the way we understand it, how it works. I'm just, again, if we make certain changes, it may still continue to look to people that may take a few, but should they go through the process, and the board may not agree about, having some numbers, sort of a high, a top. This is what we would take at the middle schools. This is what
we certainly, if that's the board's desire, we can put them in.
And I say that because I think with some of the, the other issues. So, the short history is there was a point in time where, funding was tied to having, more students, and it was important for us. That goes back, 30 years now. And it's become, ironically, it becomes a budget issue. And I think people came and asked questions and have sent letters and got fired up because when this was first talked about, it wasn't really clear that we were not going to freeze or stop or make changes that could potentially have long-term impact. So I appreciate everybody coming and helping us make sure that we understood all the issues and did that because it wasn't really clear in the beginning. We were having a discussion, but we needed to hear that. And so, ironically, now that we, our basic aid district is no longer a budget issue, it's sort of it's an ethical and moral issue. It's a community issue, And for me, I don't, but I want to, I'm proud of the work we've done because even with that being, the easy answer is you get rid of the kids and boom, we've saved $6 million. But last year, the superintendent, found we reduced our budget by $3 million. This year, tonight have already talked about, cuts of $5 million moving forward. And that's without telling one permit student, that they weren't going to be here or that anybody in the future who may want to come here as a transfer, isn't going to be able to do that. So, that's good work. And the SBAC committee is going to work and come back next year with a whole series of changes. So, the idea that we might have to change that and have it impact families and demographics and all that, we've been able to deal, we're doing good work in that sense. So I'm not interested in, I want to keep that up and not sort of change the dynamics of our school communities in any way, shape, or form at this point. We do come back every year and review the policy, and we find out how many people applied, how many people got accepted, and so we, and if we want to make any changes. And that's, with the numbers, we always were doing that. So that's why that was important. Let me ask because I think it's been part of the discussion. So, and there may be small changes. With SMASH, there is a change. This is really related more to the sibling issue. And maybe, I don't know if it's district-wide, so siblings have, for the most part, been able to just take a seat in the school if they're a permit, their brother or sister or have a permit, they're in the school, they're ready to go, and they've pretty much been able to take a seat at that school. From our discussions, I understand that's not going to be the case anymore. We will make sure that resident students will take seats first, and then some siblings may not get into that particular school but be offered a seat elsewhere in the district?
Yeah, let me take a moment and talk about that because, and again, we'll take direction from the board. I think that what I've heard from the board in various discussions is concerned that at Smash, that a number of resident families are blocked out, that the applications far exceed the space available. And it's best talked about from the kindergarten standpoint, because that's where most people enter Smash. They typically stay in Smash. Occasionally there's a space here and there in an upper grade, but most is at Smash. What the current policy says, something to the effect of previous guidelines regarding Smash and Edison remain in effect. Well, trying to find where that's written down. They've had a process that they've done year in and year out. What I found out is that in that process, so let's just say you have 24 spots in K, which is what they have. That's typically what they have in a year. If they have a sibling who needs an interdistrict permit, because there's already a sibling at Smash, they get one of those 24 spots. Similarly, if they're an employee of Smash, but they live outside their district, their child gets one of those 24 spots. So it might be that you have 8 slots already taken up by siblings and employees before there even is a lottery for the resident families. So that's, I think, so
Right,
this
but what's the is there an ed code issue here?
No.
Because I thought that within the district, permits are always filled first.
Okay, so intra-district permits, if you have, for Smash, if a sibling is there and the sibling wants to go to Smash, we don't have a problem with that. It's from outside the district. So if they have a sibling, if there's a student at Smash, a 4th grader, and now but they are attending on an interdistrict permit, and now they have an incoming kindergartner, they have to apply for a permit. What Smash currently does is assure them that K spot.
Just ask, does the ed code require us to fill the other 16 seats with intra-district prior to inter-district? Our policy has always, and I hate to
Yeah, no, it's fine.
get on the one school about it. I mean, I don't know if it's an issue with Edison as well, that our local residents get first dibs at the seats in our schools before we go outside.
And what I found out is that wasn't happening at Smash. So this policy changes that. It basically says families can apply for an interdistrict permit to attend Smash as they would any other school. So we're not discounting people applying to Smash on an interdistrict permit. However, in practice, we know that the resident applications far exceed 24. So we know that the lottery process will result in 24 residents occupying those slots, which means there isn't going to be a space for that employee's kid at Smash. There may be a space at another school in the district, not at Smash, and similarly a sibling. So that is a change here. I think that's staff's recommendation, but if the board wants to give those spots, I think there's a concern about the resident piece, not having access to the full slots.
I'm supportive of the way you have that. And then in a number of previous years, it's been for a while now, with kindergarten, we've actually even, and some schools opened up, I think often at Rogers, 1 or even 2 new kindergartens to make sure that we had room for residents. Like, what was that? And will that not continue?
It has not been our practice in recent years to do that. We have said, this is the space we have. If we have 21 students at Rogers and taking 2 students on an interdistrict permit isn't going to put the TK through 3 class average over 24, we might do that. But we're not going to say, well, if we take 10 more permits or 20 more permits, we can add another staff. That I don't think is our interest in doing.
So to sum it up, Mark, is it fair to say that we've looked at the policy, we're making some changes, but it's not making any essential changes to our policy, and we expect a similar number of permits to be issued, assuming people want to transfer to our schools?
That remains to be seen. I suspect we might see a bit of a decline. It just would be slower rather than large and impactful all at once. Because again, it carries out, as you know, from one grade level to the next and so on.
Well, it will on, you're right, the opportunity, but was 20 some odd students per year.
Right.
So over a dozen years, it'll be 200 some odd students. Right.
Greg, okie dokie. Okay, so the home district release cycle, we're clear on, you're gonna fix that language. This is just crafting now, right? Unfortunately.
Say that one more time.
So I'm just gonna work through some crafting stuff, right? Some wording stuff.
Are you on the policy or the AR?
I'm talking to Mark about what he's gonna write down, and he's gonna put it where it belongs because he's in charge of that. So on the home district release, we're clear that's once and done. That was, whatever that was, wasn't intentional. Second thing, in terms of explicitly calling out natural disasters, my suggestion would be that it goes through 12th grade under the theory that you mentioned before, which is over time that will probably whittle away as people find, if they do, they find other communities or they find their way back in, or some people will hang around wherever they are and stay in our schools, but wherever they've gone, we want to support their evolution. So as one board member, that would be my recommendation there. And the question of whether you have to call it out explicitly as a separate thing, I think is just how it flows with the Ellis Act. I think you probably have to call Ellis Act out separately, but the moved out of district, you could merge them or not if they're the same, blah, blah, blah. That would be, again, one board member's suggestion. So here's the thing. So this is a practical thing, but my understanding is we have taken down the links for parents to submit their permit information, which is causing sort of a general freak out, and the possibility that people are gonna just go elsewhere and we're gonna lose people that we otherwise might want. So my suggestion would be, at your soonest convenience, open that back up again, even if you have to say, we're not telling you, we're receiving them, we're not yet able to accept them, but again, as one board member, I would recommend you want the permits in your hand, which now we fully expect you will take, but you want those permits in your hand. We don't want to have people get to the site and can't get in. Sir? Yeah.
If I could just comment on that. If we could potentially do that if we're resolved on the categories, because that is the information that we collect from them in the application.
Is there a way to go back to them afterwards and do it? Because the problem is I've heard a lot of frustration and it sends the message that we're not interested in them, and that's not true. So if there's, or how about this, we can't accept permits, but please, fill out this form telling us that we're redoing our policy, we are still accepting permits. Give us your name, your contact information, and we will let you know as soon as we're able to give you the permit application. But in some way, we want to say we're open for business, we love you, please come here. Because it sends a very chilling message right now. My suggestion in terms of crafting, I found the new policy, I love the clarity we had of this. We have category 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And in the new policy, the clarity of that table or list, whatever you call it, sort of got mushed up. I would suggest that we put that in because we need to explain it to people, and that table is great for going, here's how it works. So for me, I would take the right-hand side of that slide and put it into the policy just like we had the old one in there. In terms of mushing up city, SMC, and working, I totally get your point. My fear would be that if we do that, we're going to have people in here going, you're taking away the city employees and SMC's right to have permits. You've taken, and it's like, we don't need that. It was bad enough that we had a bunch of people thinking we weren't accepting, that we were going to kick out permits, which we never, ever contemplated doing. But that could set off another wave. So I'll support whatever my colleagues want to do. That would be my fear if we go forward mushing those together, that we would set off a wave of confusion. So I would also suggest, I handed you Ann's document. She put a lot of work into that, and she's very smart, so there may be things you can steal from that if that's just a resource for you. And there may be language tweaks that I'm going to miss here that she might have noticed. So I saved the most painful for last in terms of hurting my head at 10 o'clock at night. So there's language in the BP that says the district will accept applications for inter-district permits in grade TK through 10th grade, absent agreement to the contrary with a student's district or residence. I have no idea what that means.
Yeah, I agree with you on there. It came from a recommendation from legal on that. But part of that is, in theory, we're supposed to have every district that releases students have an agreement with us, and we're supposed to have an agreement with them. Nobody does that.
Okay.
So that's what that's referenced. I'll take that out.
Okay, good. And I think I'm good. I hope I'm good.
Great.
And by the way, I appreciate everybody here. You guys who spoke, I'm sorry we scared the heck out of you. And, the board for supporting this. I think it's really, really important. And thank you, teachers, for sticking around through this. So sorry you had to wait. Thank you.
So, Mark, to sum up, so to make sure what I've heard from the board, and if I've missed anything, please let us know, because staff will come back to us in 2 weeks with a revised recommendation. What I've heard is extending Edison, and this is not stuff we've agreed to, it's stuff we want staff to think about and come back to us with in the next read. Talk about Edison K-12, talk about making work in the district one group, whether we agree with it or not, talking about the natural disaster piece, so we have that clear. Let's look at what it would be if a continued permit due to loss of employment, let's see what that would look like. And then for one piece that we haven't really talked about, but if you move out voluntarily, Mark, do you stay till 12th grade? Do you stay till you finish if you leave in 3rd grade, do you stay till 5th? What do we do? So that's something we should probably talk about at the next. Those seem to be the suggestions I heard from here.
Or anybody's interested in keeping the caps, what was in the old policy, the number that we would allow at each.
Okay, so if you want to, Mark, if you want to get back to us, if a firm cap helps you or if it hinders you, how that would play out, if that's something you would want to revisit or not, you'll let us know about that too. And then the last thing that I want to bring up, Tara, your mic is still on, or Mark, is that your mic that's on? Because when the mics are on across the room, you get this horrible feedback, and maybe it's just a headache. I just want to say one quick thing, because we keep talking about our permits bring in diversity, our permits bring in diversity, we love our diverse students. I just want to point out that permits bring in 3% diversity, both in Santa Monica and Malibu. It is the same number. And the other thing that really sticks at me is the socioeconomic disadvantage number is not 3%. It's 2.5 in Malibu and 1.5 in Santa Monica. So I just want to, diversity means so much more than just what you look like, where you're from, diversity of thought, diversity of economics. It was really, a couple of weeks ago, it really just stuck in me. I just wanted to share that anyway. So thank you all for putting up with this discussion.
John, can I just, we have not decided anything, but they did hear every single board member, I think, speaking positively about the chart that's up there. So I don't want, we haven't decided anything yet.
It's going to come back to us in 2 weeks for a vote with staff recommendations with those things that I brought out. Yeah, I just wanted to just mention that one thing that just was can we move on or no?
Well, it depends on what you're about to say here in my response.
I'm done.
Question,
Okay,
no, my question of you, because the way you just framed that and you were mirroring back what you heard, I heard that there were things to still be considered, and that troubles me because we could have ourselves another evening like this one in 2 weeks' time. So I think, I want there to be a polling of the board
All
tonight
right,
to see whether or
great,
not.
so let me go through this right now.
May I just finish?
Yeah, I think I know
It's
where you're
just-
going.
I think it's a very easy thing to say, is there clarity here on this? That's what the recommendation that
Okay.
that Craig just
Maybe
said.
some stuff we can knock off quickly. Does anybody have any concern about extending Edison K-12? The Edison permit K-12? No, I didn't think so. A bigger issue is work in district. Do we need to have separate categories for work in district, or are we amenable to one category for working in district?
I would like.
You see, that's what I'm saying, there's still discussion to have on these things, so, I mean, to me.
I don't think any of these folks are gonna come back for that, so.
Right, I mean, I would rather have staff come up with one clean recommendation, and if you disagree with that, we'll have that out in 2 weeks.
Well, But I think maybe this is the moment where you ask the staff. Craig suggested that he feared that if it were to be collapsed into a single priority, then there might be misunderstandings, particularly from our partners at the college and our partners at the city. And then we won't be prepared to adopt anything at that meeting, and staff needs to know this policy so that they can notify the community of what our priorities are for the next academic year's permits. Is there a way maybe staff could, I'm here as,
Let's pick one. Does anybody really care?
or is there a question, I mean, do you think, Mark, that there is going to somehow be someone harmed if we leave it as is, if they work within the boundaries of the cities?
Optimistically, I would hope that someone who works at the college or someone who works for the city of Malibu or city of Santa Monica understands that they work within the boundaries of our school district. However, maybe that's a change for a future iteration.
But then I'm also thinking, so what if it gets to a particular moment where staff says on the space that we have 10 spots available in the city of Santa Monica, right? And you have a general collapse of works within the boundaries. And as you stated, they take, which I don't think this is the best way to do it. I think you should probably get some like of those lottery balls and put numbers on it and stuff. But you said that someone's like just taking forms and throwing them up in the air. I think there's a better way of doing that. But I can imagine that the city of Santa Monica, noting of the substantive financial contributions it makes to the school district, to think that there are employees of that city whose applications are there and are not getting any kind of preference or priority, I think that's a problem. And I don't support the collapsing.
Was it the original intent that people in the city of Santa Monica and college have priority over the general population? Was that a philosophy?
All right, I'm gonna try to say this. Staff recommendation has clear categories laid out, what's recommended. I am going to suggest that because we all seem okay with that we bring that back in 2 weeks. And there are a couple issues that we still would like to discuss more. Oscar's suggestion of what happens if somebody is terminated from their employment. Your suggestion, other suggestion of do we all combine them into one thing? But we're not gonna figure it out late night on dais now. And if you don't wanna have that discussion in 2 weeks, let's agree to what we agreed to, accept that, the good is the enemy of the whatever, the perfect, and move on. Because we know, at least we know what we've agreed to tonight with a couple points that we can address down the road. From what I've heard, I haven't heard anybody who disagrees with the 9. Am I allowed to do a straw poll? Straw poll, thumbs up with 9 criteria? Straw poll looks good. And then we've got a couple issues to keep kicking around down the road. As Richard said, this is a living thing. Mark, are we clear?
Put the chart in, is that what I heard? And
Yeah.
keep the 9 categories.
Yep. And then we have a couple things that we've agreed on that were the changes. Wonderful. Sarah, we've moved the wrong item. The next item is going to be J5, which is adopt resolution number 1929 regarding the release and non-reelection of certificated temporary employees. And we do have many people here who would like to speak to us about that after it is presented. We did the wrong thing. No, that's not what we were told from our CTA representative.
Maybe not. What is? I
Ms.
thought,
Braff. Are members of the union here to address the information item, which is the layoffs, or are they here to, so it's the information
so
item?
that's what we did.
That's what we did. So we're going to go to the agenda as changed the way we did before.
Okay,
Which means we're
where
now
we are.
going to information K, information item, notice of recommendation not to reemploy permanent or probationary employees. Dr. Kelly, for the information item, do we have something to share with the board, which is just employee identification numbers? We have just the information item. We actually have a physical piece of paper with,
Yeah, Dr. Drotti had.
okay, so let's, yes, sir.
You will also notify, you'll tell the public that we're not taking action, right? The information item is not an action item.
Correct. Correct. As Dr. Fielder and Justman just said, this is an information item for the board. Action will not be taken on this until, I believe, in May, but it's an information item, and we have members of the public who wish to speak to this, so we will now do so. And this is how we're going to do it. This is just how we're going to do it. We are so far off of any procedure, proper procedure, then this is just how we're going to do it.
No, it's fine. You can speak on information items. It's just they would have come later in the agenda. It's the last item on the agenda. Okay, exactly. Okay, I think we have 10 speakers, if they're all still here. The first one is Kazuki Uema and Courtney Howard. That's two people on one, but okay. And the second one is Andrea Shore. Third one would be Amy Golden. Thank you for waiting this long, and we really do apologize. It's just, as you can see, not an easy meeting.
I'm going to donate the rest of my time to Amy Golden. And I know you addressed this, and I know you have a job to do here and a lot of things to discuss. But one, the fact that it's even on your radar to cut teachers is reflective of your level of respect for us. And there's a direct correlation, in my opinion, to the lack of respect that you feel for us, that you continued on with this conversation, knowing we need to wake up tomorrow and teach our students. And it feels like if you thought about what's best for our kids, you'd have rearranged the agenda and let us speak, because I still have to go home and grade papers.
Do I get her a minute?
Yes, go ahead.
Good evening, board members, Dr. Drotti, and senior cabinet. My name is Amy Golden Malone, an advisor at Santa Monica High School, and tonight I'm here to represent the entire SMM USD counseling team, including school counselors, college and career counselors, and advisors. Our district school counseling program is aligned with our district's LCAP goals. The goals include that all graduates are socially just and ready for college and careers, and that students and families engage in safe, well-maintained schools that are culturally responsive and conducive to 21st century learning. If you take a counselor away, we cannot reach those goals that are defined and expected by all of our stakeholders. Counselors are the first line of defense. We are the consistent force at all schools that families, students, and faculty depend on for support. Cutting counselors will increase our caseloads, creating a greater disparity in opportunity and achievement gaps. Although our caseloads may seem small compared to other districts, no one can argue an achievement gap still exists, as well as disproportionality among student groups that our team currently addresses. With these smaller caseloads, there are expectations for increased individualized services, which we meet on a daily basis. Creating larger caseloads will exacerbate issues of college and career rates, suspension rates, attendance, to name a few. We want to ensure that all of our students receive individualized services to close the achievement gap, promote equity, and ensure that all students have access to A through G college preparatory curriculum. Counselors are crucial to ensuring that students receive individualized post-secondary options. Our district school counseling program addresses the emotional well-being of all of our children. Our students are coming to school on a daily basis with stress, anxiety, and depression. Counselors are first in line to respond to mental health issues every day, helping to provide the proper interventions or referrals to best support each student with their unique struggles. A cut in even one counseling position eliminates a staff member who will drop everything and be here really late to support a child in crisis. One less person to conduct a suicide or threat assessment to save lives. One less person to run support groups. One less person to help that first-generation college-bound student navigate the college admissions process. One less person to advocate for the student who feels like they have no voice. I think it's important to emphasize and reiterate, it is one less person to conduct a suicide or risk assessment to save our children. It's this time of transition and trauma within our district. There could be no worse time to cut a member of our counseling team. Cutting someone who provides consistency and stability in our school climate would be detrimental to the well-being of our school community, detrimental to our kids. Thank you.
Andrea Shore, no? Claudia Bautista, Ned Acker, and Maggie Colburn. Sure, absolutely.
My name is Maggie Colburn. I am a 10-year teacher at Samo High, and I love my job. This is my 4th year under contract at Samo, where I teach AVID 12, US History, and AP US History. Last year, my AP students had an 80% pass rate on the APUSH exam, whereas the College Board shows only 53% of students passed it. I first came to this district as a student teacher in the fall of 2015, first at JAMS, and then in the spring continued at Samo. At the end of that year, I was hired as a full-time social studies teacher. SMM USD has invested in me, and I've invested in this district. I've worked hard to help bring about the equity goals Dr. Noguera presented with us after his work 5 years ago. While at SAMO, in addition to being an AVID teacher and member of the AVID site team, for which I've received extensive training, I've been part of the social justice cohort, have worked to revise the curriculum for US and APOS for ACES certification, in which we have incorporated project-based learning, and I am a member of the Carbe College Access Network. Through Carbe, I've been working to make access to four-year schools a reality for our students of color through a program I co-designed called Goals. Goals provides targeted help in the college process from teachers and counselors who volunteer their personal time. Yet, due to the board's decision to adopt its skipping criteria, my position and all of the work I've done to bring equity to our students has been put at risk in favor of teachers who are still on probationary contracts, and honestly, I don't understand why. With our numerous veteran teachers with project-based learning, training, and experience at SAMO. Students need to be first, and so please, don't destroy the work we have done towards achieving Dr. Noguera's goals by laying off change-making teachers and by overstuffing classrooms, because yes, when you cut teachers, class sizes will go up. Please keep your cuts as far away from the classroom. And finally, please stand by this pledge of transparency we have heard about, but have yet to truly see. Thank you.
Hi, board members. My name is Claudia Bautista Nicholas. I've taught at Santa Monica High School for the past 18 years, and I have a 100% passing rate in my APs. I stand before you because I was shocked that our district's first official budget cutting action was to cut 45.4 teachers. Although I understand the urgent end to balance the district budget, I cannot comprehend as a parent nor as a teacher that the only resolution passed on February 20th was a direct cut to the classrooms and the teachers who serve them. You might think that we are overstaffed, but most of our classes are 35-to-1 average. That means that the average English teacher and social studies teacher takes home between 150 and 175 essays to grade. You don't see that reflected in the 5 FTEs in secondary English, nor in the 5 FTEs in secondary social studies positions you eliminated. You won't see the impact in the teachers' families, nor the approximate 1,700 students they serve. In the past years, my colleagues and I have embraced and attended training in blended learning programs, AVID, civic action projects, project-based learning, restorative justice, social justice standards, AP training, mindfulness in education, just to name a few. My students are being featured in the Facing History Toolkit due out this spring that will help teachers implement project-based learning. You have invested in teachers to provide an equitable 21st century education for our students. If you visited our classrooms at Samo High, you would see how they've incorporated this training in our teaching. The spirit of the Education Code 44955 was to help districts hire teachers who have specialized training that might be lost due to reduction in forced decisions. But the current skipping criteria outlined and approved by the board ignores the work that our Samo High teachers are doing in their classrooms. Many of our tenured teachers have been recognized by the state of California for civic action projects, and recently in 2016, Samo High was recognized by LACO as a California democracy school. It would be a mistake to lay off these teachers who are trained in their valuable methods that the district has invested in. Thank you.
Thank you. Ned Acker, then Adrian Coriati, and then Lisa Lambert.
Good evening, board, board members, Dr. Drotti, and senior staff. My name is Ned Munoz Acker. I am a social studies teacher at SAMO. I teach AP Government, U.S. History, Spanish Immersion, and U.S. History. I'm here in support of all teachers who are on the proverbial chopping block, and in particular, my colleague in my department, Maggie Colburn, who is an amazing teacher, and SAMO's social studies in SAMO's social studies department, and it's my department, and I've been there for the last 19 years, and Maggie is one of the best I've ever seen. So I'm truly interested to know the process by which your criteria was created by through the skipping process, and skipping over teachers to select teachers for RIFs and pink slips. I'm also curious to know why, then in this time of an immense fiscal crisis, that the PBL is still being fully funded and fully staffed by 4 teachers and 1.5 admin for 38 children, while UI cuts to teachers at Samo High. At Samo, we have classes that are already brimming with students, often 36 or more to a class, of the same population of students that exists at the PBL campus. So are you not effectively choosing one population, a significantly smaller population, over the larger? This is not to say PBL isn't a sound concept. It's the timing. A crisis simply doesn't allow it. Does it make sense to spend scant resources on a new school during a fiscal crisis? Does it not make more sense to postpone the PBL until our coffers can manage it? Until we can afford it? We clearly cannot right now. Is this a sacred cow? And why? Why are we why are we not owed an explanation? We already employ PBL methodologies at Samo High and have dozens of teachers trained in it. Can we not save the roughly $500,000 or so that you are spending on the PBL? And by the way, I'm going to skip over some of this stuff and just go to Maggie if I could just finish this. We are here as teachers, and we're here late as teachers because of the recommendations of Dr. Noguera and his analysis of our district to seek out sources of inequities. And Maggie and Claudia already spoke to those inequities, so I'm not going to go into all the detail. But we need to, as a district, come together and find other ways to do this. And I would think that as school board members and as senior staff, we can find a way to save these teachers' jobs and people like Maggie, because we need them and our kids need them. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Adrian Cariati. I'm a teacher at Santa Monica High School. The district's goal to improve the learning of all English learners has been a consistent priority for the last few years, and that's been really encouraging because sometimes the district goal change when we have new leaders or there's a new fad in education, and English learners are often overlooked. They have very specific learning needs. But I'm concerned about the fiscal priorities embodied by the proposed staffing cuts and the exemptions from the seniority list. I'm totally confused about how the district plans to meet literacy goal for English learners while cutting every single literacy coach in the district. There's cuts to language arts teachers under consideration. I don't get that. I'm confused about how larger class sizes are going to help English learners get one-on-one intervention in a timely fashion. We all know that class sizes will jump in core subject areas, and especially social studies, which is a language-dependent discipline. It requires a lot of skilled differentiation. I don't know why project-based learning campus teachers are exempt from the seniority rules. And I just don't understand why you feel like you can afford this program. It's incomprehensible to me when we have not solved the learning needs of long-term English learners in our district. I know we can't avoid all the cuts, but it's just common sense to cut the Obama campus. It doesn't feel good, but it's a no-brainer. It's fiscally irresponsible to keep that on the budget. You've all said that you've been listening to us. You've talked a lot about our values as a district. I hope you are listening, because a lot of people have spoken to you tonight, including family members and people from all over the community, about cutting the Obama campus. Believe us when we say that is an easy, fiscally responsible cut. Thank you.
Lisa Lambert, then Emily Lee, and Steve Cannell.
Oh, all right. Good evening. My name's Lisa Lambert. I've been the 6th grade physical education teacher at Malibu High School for 14 years. I've also taught ASB, freshman seminar, and currently this year I run the entire academic intervention for the middle school, supporting our DF students to become passing students, which then in turn improves their behavior on campus. As a 14-year teacher, I would expect to be up here today to defend my coworkers who are beginning their careers as teachers in this time of reduction. Unfortunately, that's not the case. The board approved 25% reduction of the physical education teachers in this district. There are only under 20 of us. Last week, it was brought to my attention that certain teachers were being protected from layoffs, or what we call skipping, based on coaching certain sports. If you allow skipping, then I'm up for a pink slip. I find it hard to believe that after 14 years of service as the only female physical educator at Malibu High School, that next year the girls in Malibu may not have a female physical education teacher to support them in their needs at our school. That you would choose a first-year coach over their needs. This process is frustrating and causing a lot of anxiety among teachers. How long until you figure this out? Should I be looking for another job? Skipping's not fair. After 14 years of service to the students of Malibu, I feel I would be valued more than being notified that I may receive a pink slip next week. I don't know if I'm getting one, only you guys know, but I don't think it's right.
Good evening. My name is Emily Lee, and I'm a mathematics teacher at Santa Monica High School. May I start? Oh, okay. I'm a mathematics teacher at Santa Monica High School. I have taught multivariable calculus, AP Calculus AB, honors pre-calculus, honors algebra 2, and algebra 2P at Santa Monica High School over the course of my time. I'd like to address the reduction in force that you're considering implementing. I know that what you're saying when you say class sizes won't increase. What you mean is that our total average won't increase. But I ask you to think about it if it was your kid in our district. I find it so hard to believe that you really think that the numbers you see on paper truly is what we see in the classroom. If you have a kid in our district, you and I all know that the classes they're in will probably increase in size. Just because the average is 15 kids to one adult doesn't mean any of our classes are ever even close to 15. You're making cuts in the wrong place, and it feels like you lack the care and consideration, which is also clear from your arrangement of tonight, of the people and kids involved, and that like I, as an employee, found crucial to a district I pride myself to be a part of. This is exactly why I left LAUSD. I felt like they were doing exactly what you're doing now. I got pink slips every year just because I was young. I'd get plopped from school to school, and every next year, when suddenly they had money again, they'd be calling me, asking me to come back. And this is what you're implementing. You will lose loyalty and in general create an overall feeling of dissent in our district. I've taught so many difficult classes that have been really hard for me over the years because of my loyalty to this district and my pure belief that we'll always do what's best for the kids. But I'm losing sight of this belief because of the decisions you're making and just even that you're considering making cuts where and how you're choosing to make the cuts. I know I'm not the only one who feels this way, and it will be extremely difficult to recover from this reduction in force, not only in terms of the overall feeling, effectiveness, and loyalty in the staff, but it'll also destroy the high regard of our district that we've maintained. We will be robbing our students of the education they deserve, and I know these are all not things you want. Please find a different way to meet your budgeting needs so we don't deteriorate the quality of this district I pride myself to be a part of. Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Steve Cannell. I teach 4th grade at Franklin Elementary School, and I've been in this district for 25 years. We have a structural budget deficit because we implement programs that have structural deficits. It's not rocket science. I'm here to tell you that our district's mission statement states we will provide extraordinary achievement for all students while simultaneously closing the achievement gap. I wrote that, so I know that. Teachers have an immense impact on the lives of their students. We've heard tonight from several students about how the teachers have influenced their lives. I'm concerned that some of the district's budget priorities seem to align with certain types of expenses at the cost of losing these mission-critical employees. Do consultants really assist in providing extraordinary achievement for all students while simultaneously closing the achievement gap? Do they do that more than a spectacular teacher? This year only, $3.3 million is being spent on consultants. That's 33 teachers. Are those consultants more valuable than a teacher? Than 33 teachers? When President Keene asked about how the district is reducing its budget expenses, Dr. Drotti stated there have been many reductions. Many people in this building are more pissed off than he is. However, when I looked quickly at the 18-19 audited actuals and the 19-20 second interim report, the total services and other operating expenses, which include consulting expenses, increased by $4.4 million this year. That's 44 teachers, the entire pink slip list. As an aside, only $844,000 in the second interim this year is legal. That's 5%. Please examine very carefully the spending patterns of this district's budget to ensure they align with the district's mission to provide extraordinary achievement for all our students while simultaneously closing the achievement gap. This takes a talented teacher, not escalating consultant and other operating costs. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was our last speaker.
Okay, again, thank you all for your patience. I know we've apologized multiple times for the late hour, but thank you all for sticking around and making your opinions heard. We are now going back to discussion items. Discussion item 1, Santa Monica Ed Foundation Quarterly Report. Whoop. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. Don't get up. I'm sorry. We're going to consideration of formal board declaration of support of special legislation to permit continuation of parcel taxes after unification in each separately established territory. And I am going to kick this one off. 1 second. Sorry, guys, I had this up and then, I'll find it. I gotta find my notes on this one. No, I have separate notes. Okay, guys, so board, some of you guys are not, we should probably shut the door too. Rick, do you mind shutting the door that's next to you? Thank you so much, I appreciate it. Or Linda's got it. So, board, this item, I have about 9 bullet points here to tell you now how we got to this item and what this item is about. So, in talks about unification, it had always been assumed that the existing parcel tax would continue in Santa Monica, but have to be voted on again in Malibu. In the fall of 2019, while the two negotiating committees met for the first time, that long-standing assumption was called into question, raising the specter that the parcel tax might have to be voted on and reapproved in both communities. This became a potential deal breaker for the Santa Monica negotiating team, and it was tagged as something that must be resolved. At the same time, we have been awaiting responses to, and when I say we, I'm conferring Santa Monica negotiating team representing the district. We have been awaiting responses to other outstanding financial issues. We were recently informed that the Malibu team had drafted special legislation addressing the potential concerns about the parcel tax and had approached state legislators about the issue as a possible solution, a legislative solution. The Malibu negotiating team prefers immediate action on the proposed parcel tax legislation. The negotiating group in Santa Monica for the district believes that the knowledge that there is a legislative fix to this provides us with the comfort level we need to move forward with negotiations. We are still waiting for Malibu's response to financial issues that were tagged a while ago. We believe that agreeing on a financial resolution remains key, and we believe we are making solid progress, but don't yet have the agreement finalized. We believe we should finalize a financial agreement prior to expending time, expense, and goodwill on pursuing the legislative solution to the parcel tax issue. Malibu City Council will discuss this topic next Monday and vote on it. We were clear that we feel it is better to wait until the other work is done before us formally voting as a governing board to officially support this legislation. The positive news is that our meeting on Tuesday was a very positive meeting. God, that's terrible writing, I apologize. And we are hopeful that we will be able to achieve an actual resolution on unification. There are a lot of steps remaining in the process, which in totality will take a few years to fully implement, but we are confident at this time that there is a viable potential pathway forward in furtherance of unification, which will still take an undetermined amount of time as we deal with LACO, State Board, and the vote, even after this occurs, but we have every reason to believe that we may get there. So, this item is, we've been asked if we would approach our state legislators and pursue, would we, as a board, take action to ask them to do this special legislation now. The recommendation from the negotiating team from Santa Monica for our district is that we wait until everything else is wrapped up, because we are very confident that once we wrap it up, the legislative fix is fairly simple. So that's what's before us now. This is a discussion item. At some point, we will have to bring it back for a vote, but I'm presenting this to you now, and now I guess we're open for any questions or comments or whatever we can do for discussion.
We have one speaker who's been sitting here enjoying our meeting.
We do have a speaker that's enjoying our parliamentary process. Yeah.
Is this familiar? Our
Yes,
speaker is
this is familiar territory.
Rick Mullen, council member from Malibu.
And I'm representing Mayor Ferrer, who couldn't be here, and I just want to say thank you all for your service and to the community. It's not easy what you do, and it's very selfless of you to give of your life, really, for the SMM USD. And I wanted to thank you for having the meeting on Tuesday. I thought it went really well, and I appreciate the energy, positive energy coming from your side. And I wanted to thank you preemptively for supporting this, which is what I would describe it as a legislative solution. Very simple, actually. The language is extremely simple. Doesn't mention Santa Monica, doesn't mention Malibu. It's nothing specific to our negotiating details, and it doesn't bind either side to anything. But what it does, it's a very simple resolution to what I understand, and I do understand it's a showstopper for your side. Going to the taxpayers, as recently evidenced by the fire department tax increase request. It's not easy. It's not easy at all. And if we can come up with a very simple solution to something that is the biggest obstacle, I would say, from your perspective, and as I said, I completely understand that. That's what this is all about. It doesn't bind anybody to anything. There is, as you said, it's a long way to go. There's a long way to go to finalize this whole process, but this legislative solution, very simple, removes a big impediment. So thank you very much for extending the opportunity to meet with you on short notice and for letting me come down and express the support that we have and appreciation for everything that you do and for my encouragement to you to support this simple solution to the most difficult aspect of the road ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. Questions, comments, anything that we can clarify?
I have a question. In terms of not proceeding with it, tell me what the burden is of moving forward in terms of, it seems like it's something that Henry Stern's going to lead on. He just needs, and I don't know, because for reasons that utterly escape me, I am neither on Santa Monica's negotiating team, and Malibu thinks that it would be a Brown Act violation if they talk to me. So I don't talk to either side, which I find odd. But at any rate, so I literally don't know, but it seems to me that this is a very modest use of political capital. All we need is Richard Bloom and Ben Allen to support this or not torpedo it, or however you want to look at it, and it can go forward as it does. What would be the reason not to put this in place? As I understand spot legislation, as I understand this, there's nothing binding, there's nothing that gets us partially pregnant, there's nothing that in any way undermines the negotiation. This is just simply something put in place that will take a problem off the table should we have that problem to deal with, and if we never get to that point, it has done no harm at all. So why wouldn't we just say yes and move forward? Because it seems like, given that we're here, let's just do it.
Sure, so the answer to that, I guess I'll give my answer to that, and then maybe Lori and Richard, who are in the room, can give their answer as well. For us, when the legal opinion came in that implied that Santa Monica might have to re-vote on its share of the parcel tax, that set a lot of us back. We've learned in the last month that this legislative fix will be relatively simple. We have been assured by, not assured, as short as things can be, that this will be a relatively simple fix. So once we learned that, once I learned that, my fear of that being an impediment went away. And for me, the focus was then, let's finish all these little financial negotiations that we have to work out, and then the legislation is the cherry on top. Where you're perfectly justified in looking at it as, let's get that first, which is the impetus. To me, the special legislation can certainly happen as the last thing we do once we've agreed to everything. And to me, personally, that makes the most sense. So that's where I come down on that. There is nothing wrong with your opinion. My feeling is this is the last thing we do once we get everything else signed, sealed, delivered, I's and T's. Because we've been told that this will not be an issue, which was enough of insurance for me. But Richard and Lori can share their take on it.
What does that mean, the fix?
The special legislation would basically say that if a city is under 150, an entity that shares a parcel tax under 150,000 people wants to unify, split, whatever we want to call it, both entities, the new entities can keep their existing parcel taxes. It's a simple, clean piece of legislation does not mention Santa Monica or Malibu.
John, are there any, so that's a law that would be passed, and can somebody challenge that?
I want to be the lawyer for the board. But the short answer is yes.
I think it's important for us to say what the lawyer did tell us, and I can do that. I mean, I'm not going to lawyer for the board either, but I'm willing to say at least what was reported, and to also confirm or affirm what John has said. I think that as the three of us were sitting there as appointed by this board to be the representatives, and when we heard competing opinions pertaining to the parcel tax, and then it became, I became very nervous. I thought, oh my goodness, how do you move forward and support unification if you believe that the city of Santa Monica will have to go back to its voters to affirm the parcel tax? And I thought, I think we conveyed that this would be super problematic, and we can't really go, this is the number one thing that has to be fixed. So then the persons have been engaged, meaning the legislators, particularly Malibu initiated, and the way I am understanding it, and of course I think Lori's absolutely right, we need to hear it directly from council for the district, but is that with that spot legislation, with the legislation when passed in Sacramento, that there's a 45-day period of time in which someone can challenge what has been passed by the state legislature. I remember, that's why I'm just saying, listen, talk to the attorney. I'm just giving some number of days. And so there was some confidence. I'm speaking for myself. I thought, well, if there is legislation, special legislation, which many of us, right, on this dais have talked about, thinking that it might be necessary, if that could be had. So then I'm supportive, one person, supporting getting there, but I share John, and I'll let Lori speak for herself, but I think she's in agreement. We wanted to make sure that the other items could be addressed at the same time. So I would characterize it that there were 5 items that we're still trying to work out. The parcel tax was put at the top because we said we can't go forward if we can't fix this, and to ensure that Santa Monica will not have to go back out to the voters. We have to protect that parcel tax. And I think our council has advised us that those are minor, the other 5. So I think what John was wanting to do, and I think rightfully so, is make sure that the full board understands where we're at, where the conversations are. And I think that Rick from the city of Malibu characterized it as a positive meeting, and I would say an optimistic one. I will put my word, an urgency, that I think we're close and that something would come to the full board, our board.
So that's important information, that there's a limited time that somebody could challenge this. So if you went further on, they couldn't challenge it at any time in the future.
And we can also have that as a contingency in whatever agreement we come up with.
Right. So I think the issue here is, is that the city of Malibu looking for some indication that we're at a point, if I can paraphrase it, that we are, will be supportive of this legislation to resolve this issue. And, well, yeah, I understand. So I'm not sure, and it's a discussion item, so are all we, since they're meeting Monday, I guess having the same kind of a discussion item? For us to say that, whether it happens, I don't know how critical it is if it happened. You guys can work out when it happens, but that that if, as we move forward in the structure, that we understand that this is something that will need to be taken care of, and that we are, supportive of that legislation at the appropriate time.
And let me clarify with you, in terms of let me ask you this. I know that we haven't resolved, to me, the major pieces in terms of the economic situation here. And that we've gone before, and it's always been, it's not clear yet. So I think we were not quite even there yet in terms of the unification piece. But my question to you on this is whether, is this something that is needed in order to come to the table then to resolve that economic situation? I mean, is it needed to resolve that?
No, I think it comes down to, I think that there's a preference from the Malibu team to have this taken care of immediately. That is their preference. And it's the preference of our group that was negotiating, that we're comfortable with where we are with it. We'd like to get the financial stuff signed, sealed, delivered, and then we will get this done as the cherry on top. So it just came down to where each group felt most comfortable with, I think. That's how I saw it. Maybe Lori.
So Santa Monica says not, you don't necessarily need this, but Malibu says you do. Is that what I'm hearing?
No. I think everybody agrees that this is the path forward, that this spot legislation, as Richard referred to it as, this is the solution to this problem. And we feel very comfortable that once we want it to happen, it will happen fairly quickly. We don't feel that everything else is contingent on it. Us finding solutions to the other 4 issues is not contingent on this, because we feel comfortable that the solution will be there once we resolve those other 4. So the point of this was to have a discussion item to share where we were, what this is about. And if we want to take action on it in 2 weeks, we are welcome to do so. I think those of us who were in the room feel that we are comfortable with where we are, and when it's time to do it, we will do it. But again, it's 11:10. I feel like I'm rambling now.
I know,
Let me-
I hesitate to even try to.
Can I make a comment? Is that all right? Okay. Yeah.
We don't have any anymore.
So, it's like that Stephen Covey lecture where he has the jar and the rocks and the sand and that kind of thing. The legislative impediment is the big rock, I think. You want to get that in there. And all the details that can be worked out between us are things within our control. This is something we have to go to. And if you've ever been up to the sausage factory in Sacramento, you can appreciate that it's difficult to get things through there, even under the best of circumstances. And it does take time to get legislation through. It's not just a cherry you throw on the top at the end. It's the one thing I would say that is beyond the capability of our negotiating teams to come to agreement on. So that's why it makes sense. And that was what, as we were working out all the negotiating details, and we said, okay, we'll pretty much agree to everything you want. Wait, we have to do this. And so I think that's why, since I'm here from Malibu, I'm speaking on their behalf, that's why I think it's important to jump on it at the beginning of the legislative season and get the ball rolling. Thank you.
And one other clarification then, let's say if Senator Stern decides, he brings it forth, but he still has to get the approval of the whole legislature, the Senate, or just the Senate, or the Senate and the Assembly?
No, it would have to go through whatever rigmarole they have to go through. I think they might be able to bypass
You're mentioning
committee
assembly members
and
on
go
Richard
straight
Bloom,
to the Senate and then go to the Assembly. But it has to pass the way they do everything they do, both houses.
Has anybody had discussion with our Santa Monica legislators?
I hesitate to try this again, because I'm just going to say the same things they did. I think the disagreement that exists is about timing, and what's important and what be done first. And I guess for us, I think we're saying we would have a preference and a greater comfort level for getting a package together so that we know we really have something we agree on, and then go forward with the legislation. But there's not an argument, there's no disagreement about would we all support the legislation, assuming we have a deal. And so, and I think it's fair to say, and I think Rick has repeated this, that the Malibu team feels that the issues are minor that remain. And so I guess my take on that is if they're minor, then let's get them done and move forward. Because I think we all feel positively, and this is, as anyone would say from any position, this has been going on for a long time. So, but, and I don't think it benefits us to go through, well, why didn't that get done earlier and whatever, but I mean, everybody brings some sense of that to the table and even to hear, but I do, again, I feel like if the issues that remain are minor, then they should be able to be worked out very quickly, I think. And then we can move forward. And I would rather do it that way because I don't see putting forward legislation before we agree on something, because if there's really something out there that, and I would say it's in Malibu's hands at the moment, that is insurmountable, then why would we go to legislature and go through this or support something or tell our legislators we want them to do this before we have that deal in place? But I do think John and Richard are trying to convey, and I don't mean to in any way convey anything different, that we think we are on a good path. It's really an issue of, there's not a right or wrong to this in a way. It's how you see, it's how you come to it and how you see it. It's,
I may just add to round out a bit. I think it's important to say, because I want Rick particularly to hear me say it, is that Malibu heard us say that this was the #1 issue for us, because when we got these competing opinions about the parcel tax, we really were like, oh boy, this could be a deal killer. This could end unification talks. I think I said that actually myself. I said that. Well, I think the board did not convey that, but I think it was but I need you to hear, it was the sentiment of the three of us that we thought if the city of Santa Monica has to go out and re-vote on the parcel tax, we believe that it would be a deal breaker for this board. We conveyed that. So then I think it is, I want Rick to hear me. I heard him and them, they saw that as the #1 obstacle that needed to be overcome, and they moved quickly to seek out their legislators. So, and then we said, well, we don't want to just, we feel like that's more like the cart before the horse, so we want to make sure that we address, like you said, Maria, or like you mentioned, the other financial components. They believe, Malibu, that they are minor. I'm repeating, but I'm filling this part in, but so does the representatives doing, so does Shin, and so does David. So they too believe that these things can be addressed quickly, these remaining pieces. And then right as Lori said, well, if it's that easy, then let's get it done. And then I think we can report that Malibu said, yep, we can get it done. And so I think we're looking to see now, they've said they've got urgency. They heard that we need to have that cleared up before we, as a board, would vote to go hand in hand with legislation. And so that's how we all characterize it, as optimistic as we left. So we were able to clear up some of the confusion, some of the miscommunication about why we were maybe being sticklers of the parcel tax, which I think was the right thing to do. And they're now going to work with our team, with Shin and David, at ironing out those last few things. But I think it's important to state that Shin and David believe that we are close.
How long does it take for the legislation to go through?
I don't know if you guys have an answer to that, but that's one of the things I was going to say is, when I was dealing with this some years ago, there's a particular seasonality to it, and it's got to run. I mean, I think the standard special legislation is kind of a year-long, if not longer, thing. So the part I don't get, we're all here, he's here, they want to do it. Like, yes, our legislators have to sort of put a little shoulder to this. I don't think this is a big boulder. So wouldn't it just be simpler to say, we don't know how long it's going to take, but if there's an urgency to it, which I'm thrilled that there's an urgency to it, let's just, and I think all they want us to do is nod our head and say, yeah, that's fine, go do that. We, at very least, tell our legislators, our Santa Monica legislators, not to torpedo it, which is probably the biggest piece of this, I think, and let it run, because unless you know something I don't, it could be a year, year and a half, 2
Okay,
year
so I think I
process.
do know, okay, so to address this, first of all, one of the first issues I had with us taking quick action on this was I felt it was disrespectful to my fellow board members who have not been apprised on what's going on. I don't believe that the board writ large understands where we are really with unification, how this plays into the big formula. If there is an urgency to it, why are we going to do that? What has changed since 5 months ago that's causing this urgency? I didn't feel the board was prepared yet for that. So to me, the discussion, I'm saying, this is out there. This is a fix to the big problem. We have assurances from our local people here that this is not a year and a half, 2 year process. They have told us that. So we feel better about that issue. So to me, those were the big things. I think the board probably wants to be apprised, which will have to happen in small groups with Ben, to say, hey, here's what's still outstanding. Here's what we think is going to be resolved. And look, the Malibu negotiating team, and again, we need to move on because this is a small item, but the Malibu negotiating team they have moved. We presented all this data and information. They have moved towards that data. They really have. So if we are really that close, if they can get this stuff signed in the next 2 weeks, 4 weeks, we can take action right away because now we know about the topic and we can brief the board. But to your point, I get Rick's argument. I get your argument. I just feel my argument is just as valid, and I would prefer to do it that way because I feel it's perfectly legitimate. That just Ralph had his hand up, then Maria, and we still have 30 minutes of work left. So we've accomplished what we wanted to accomplish, but we can just keep going.
So I guess
we have Ralph and Maria.
one way to do this is ask if you have a fourth vote to support you. But another question is, well, but it's how it comes. I mean, right. At this point, is there a fourth vote to support?
So if I were going to make a recommendation, my recommendation would be that we wait until we get the other points resolved from the Malibu negotiating team, and we sign off on that, and then we vote on this and go to special legislation.
So I am now, no, it's also good. I thought the discussion tonight after our meeting on Tuesday was not to ask and say we're going to come back and we can take a vote or anything. This was an opportunity to just say, hey, we had this meeting on Tuesday. They're going to work hard, and we hope that there's going to be some meetings with Ben, with the rest of the group, with the other members of the board, so that's it. I think we've already accomplished what we said we're going to do. We don't need to do anything else tonight.
Well, to me...
Can I tell you why, Ralph, let me just one other pop in my head. I'm terribly sorry that the miscommunication, I think, in part two is Malibu believed that this had to be done lickety-split. They really did think it had to be done by a particular moment to get into but it doesn't have to be. But we're okay now because now it's going to be a spot bill, and I think the two teams are on board and know what's got to happen, and they're working at it. And this was just an opportunity to be able to say, hey, let's let you know about this meeting we just had and what was discussed. But I didn't get a sense that we were going to be here giving direction on what to bring back as a vote. I never thought that was the case for tonight.
So if it was informational, it could have been written and just given to us. But one of the questions is, the legislators have to do work in order to make this happen. So is there a feeling that are they prepared to do that? Or, do they want to wait until it's a done deal before they do that? I'm okay with moving. Right, but you're giving us good news about where the negotiations are. So if this is something that's going to take the longest bit of time, I don't understand why we wouldn't, in good faith, say, yeah, we're ready to start to see that to go. If things fall apart, it gets pulled.
Mostly because even if we were to sign contracts today, there's still going to be a 2+ year process where this is going. The urgency is not there. The sense of urgency is to get it in the queue now, but it's not going to. We don't see it affecting any of the end results.
Well, like as you say, some people know it brought in a way. I'm fine with telling the city of Malibu that.
Let me say
sure,
this way.
If it's time to get it started, get it started.
This is a discussion item to discuss. If somebody wants to bring it back for a vote and there's 4 votes on that, we can certainly do that. That's not something that I'm going to move to. If somebody wants to move that, we can see if there's 4 votes on it and bring it back for a major action item, if that's the will.
Make a suggestion that maybe Dr.
Well, let me
Trotty
just say,
pull the
I'm
board?
in the position, because I haven't been in the queue with all of you, so, that I'd rather be brought up to speed. Because the last time we were informed, which was, I think, September or October of last year, was that it all fell apart. So I'd rather, if it's gone better, then tell us about it. And then I think I would be better well informed with that information than for me to say, oh yeah, we're ready to go, I don't know.
Maybe that's the suggestion then. Let's as soon as possible get the board members up to speed, and then if people feel comfortable at that point, we'll bring it back for a major action item and vote on it. Because looking at it now, there's 4 people that feel that way. So I think that's what we're going to do. Okay, let's keep moving because we have a lot still left to do. So that was just discussion, nothing to follow up on with that yet. We have Ed Foundation.
Thank you for sitting here all night and sharing.
Thank you very much, Rick. We really appreciate your patience.
Conflict that I have an early morning meeting, so.
By the way, Ed Foundation, thank you very much for your patience. I'm sorry that you drew the short straw today.
Good morning. Now for our closing act. Good evening, Board of Education. My name is Yolanda Lewis, and I have the pleasure of working at the Santa Monica Education Foundation, and I'm here to give you the Ed Foundation's quarterly fundraising update. Linda usually gives it, but she is saving her voice for all of your hard questions at the end. January 31st was the end of our annual parent campaign, which started in July of last year. We had a good start to the year with many back-to-school events, including TK and Kinder events and back-to-school nights. We work closely with PTAs to communicate the importance of supporting both organizations. Our 5th Pledge Days in October was a success, and we had a strong Giving Tuesday. January was a busy and successful month as we wrapped up our parent campaign. We sent out 6 different mailings between July and January, including back-to-school renewal letters, calendar year-end letters, and postcards in January. The Ed Foundation staff attended and presented at principal meetings, PTA meetings, and other parent meetings like School Smarts and Room Parent meetings. Our community loves corporate matches. Since last August, we have had 2 $50,000 matches, thanks to Bird in January and Santa Monica Place and Kilroy Realty in August. We had one $25,000 match from the Fairmont Miramar Hotel and Bungalows and MSD Partners LP during the calendar year end. We had 7 $2,500 flash matches from local corporate heroes, along with a total of 5 $5,000 flash matches from David Yoon of Compass Realty. As of January 31st, we had 3,159 donors, 3,159 donors had contributed, and 2,500 of those donors are parents. It's been an interesting fundraising year. We've heard from a number of PTAs and other Ed Foundations that fundraising is down, both in dollars and participation. For us, parent participation is down compared to the same time last year. But we have raised about the same amount of money from parents. And that shows us that while fewer parents are donating, those who are donating are giving more. Despite parent participation being down, We are still ahead in our overall fundraising efforts by about 3% compared to last year. We continue to have the support of local businesses that we call corporate heroes because they believe in the power of strong public schools, and we are grateful to them. We have raised 13% more this year from our corporate heroes as compared to last year. And this slide shows you our top corporate supporters. This slide here lists the rest of our current corporate heroes. As we continue to solicit sponsorship opportunities for our wine auction on May 3rd, this list of corporate heroes will grow. As of February 29th, we have raised just under $2 million towards our grant to the school district for the 2021 programs. We expect that this number will continue to grow over the coming months. And here's how that number will grow. Here are our plans for the remaining 5 months of the fundraising year. While our parent campaign has ended, it ended on January 31st, there are still parents and other individuals who will give during the coming months. The Ed Foundation staff and board members are focused on renewal donors who gave last year but haven't donated this year. We will also continue to outreach to all families who haven't donated this year. And we are still soliciting corporate gifts, so we are also continuing our outreach to local foundations as well. And finally, the wine auction, our signature event, will take place on Sunday, May 3rd at the Fairmont Miramar Hotel and Bungalows. This is our 5th annual wine auction, and we've been working on it for some months with restaurants and wineries already booked. The Fairmont very generously continues to host this event, which keeps our event costs low. Ellis O'Connor, Dustin Peterson, and Matthew Lehman, the leadership team at the Fairmont, really understand that public education benefits not just our students, but everyone in our community. So on behalf of Shai Adia, who found her voice in theater, and to Nico, who was wheelchair bound but still participated in ballroom dance, and told us after receiving a standing ovation after his performance that it was the first time anyone ever clapped for him. To Katie, who learned that her creativity was a valued skill in Project Lead the Way engineering program at Samo High, and even won a $40,000 scholarship for a creation to quickly detect potential brush fires. Thank you, Board of Education. And I was going to thank our educators who had to get home for their partnership and for your partnership as we work together to ensure an excellent education for every student in our Santa Monica schools, and a special shout out to our donors because they and you help our students soar. Thank you. Now, for questions.
Questions, comments, concerns?
Yes, we'll raise
Compliments?
more.
No questions?
No. Wake up.
I know it's
Wake
We
up.
gotta wake up.
Wake up.
We're exhausted, but it doesn't mean we don't appreciate all that you do and that you've waited this long for to give this report.
No, I'm very excited to be here and very happy to, even if it's at the very end. So thank you very much.
So much, Yolanda. Thank you.
I have
Maria.
one. You know, my whole question is, I know that I mean, we had a letter tonight from the, you know, what is it, from Malibu Lead or whatever, in terms of the fundraising in Malibu, and I guess my question is still there. I mean, in terms of what are we going to do? I know that we've separated and all that, and we've gone out to help, but I think we need to really step up the game, because if that's the case, I mean, I really don't want to leave a whole set of students without any any arts. And we had a couple of parents raising the fact that they really appreciated the arts that the school district still combined Mount Santa Monica and Malibu offered. So anyway.
Yeah, definitely a topic for another night.
Okay,
that
yeah,
we're gonna have to deal
but
with
anyway,
that.
I just want to make that comment.
Thank you guys very much.
All right.
All right, thanks, Yolanda. Thank you, Linda. We have pulled item I4. We have. We're going to do that in 2 weeks because, yes, we sent Carrie home. Yes, we're not doing that. Carrie. Wow. I've heard a presentation on it. I mean, I have heard about it.
I move it. Second.
Do you have any questions? Have you heard it? Yes, we'd like it to come back for, yeah. That's awesome. All in favor? That's 5 right there. Tell Carrie, best presentation ever. That was smart. Okay, we've got 7 resolutions we gotta jam through. Lori?
Oh my God, I can't wait.
And I think the system is down, so I hope you have them saved somewhere. Okay.
The first one is a resolution recognizing Women's Herstory/History Month. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Santa Monica Malibu Unified School District Board of Education does hereby adopt this resolution to encourage the celebration of Women's History Month, the instruction to our students on the achievements and contributions of women, fostering in our students a greater understanding of the roles women have played throughout the history of our nation, and helping all students understand their responsibilities in protecting and preserving gender equality.
Okay, so moved by Craig, second by TJ.
No, by Maria.
Second by Maria.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yo. Yes.
And yes.
Yeah,
that is
Yes,
7.
I didn't get to vote.
All right, let's go to number 2, National
I'm
Middle
trying.
Level
It's
Education.
hard to pick these up, okay. National Middle Level Education Month. Now therefore be it resolved that the month of March 2020 be declared National Middle Level Education Month, and that the public be afforded opportunities to attend middle level school events and participate in programs that focus on the nature of young adolescents and celebrate the ways in which our nation's schools respond to their needs and to the needs of the nation.
Motion. Craig, Oscar. Ralph.
Yes.
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 And I'm a yes, that is 7. Oh, wonderful. Oh, now we have one that will pay attention. To recognizing Cesar Chavez. Yeah, do you have it up? Yes, I do. Go ahead.
Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Santa Monica Malibu Unified School District Board of Education does hereby adopt the resolution to honor a man who devoted his life to improving the working conditions, safety, and dignity of so many by recognizing March 31st, 2020 as the anniversary of the birth of Cesar Chavez. The board calls upon all schools and justice-minded people of the community to honor the legacy of Cesar Chavez as a symbol of hope and justice to all persons.
Susan, want to move it? And Maria will move it, seconded by TJ. Ralph?
Yes.
Oscar? Maria? Yes. TJ?
Yes.
Craig?
Yes.
Lori?
Yes.
And I am a yes, that is 7.
Mr. President, I move items J 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 together.
You want to have any kind of staff report so that anyone who might watch this knows what this is about? And then move them all together?
Is there a staff report on this, Mark? Do you like to just give us a quick
Sure.
overview? Thank you. Good idea, TJ. Well, there's a motion, seconded by Craig, and now we'll have a report from Mark.
So, Resolution 1929 is the release and non-reelection of certificated temporary employees. This is an item, as a matter of practice, we annually release teachers who have temporary contracts. We do it now as part of the March 15th notice. It's not required to do it now, but we do it as a matter of practice. Resolution 1930 is the non-reelection of certificated probationary employees. These are employees who the principals have determined should be released and disqualified from probation, and so they're being non-reelected. And Resolution 1931 is the release and non-reelection of probationary certificated administrators. This also applies to all management. And so this is part of this is that we don't do layoff for management, so it's part of some reductions in staff in that, but it's not a layoff because they're always probationary as a management employee. And then 1932 is the administrative release and reassignment. This is a group of employees whose work year will change from 200 to 220 days for next year. That's an item that will come up at a future meeting in terms of changing the job description to reflect the increase in number of days. Sorry. Oh, and the one on the back page, sorry. The one on the back page is, this is a request to add to the PKS of a 0.6 child development special education teaching services. So it'll be really addition to the original PKS that came before the board on February 20th. It just came to us recently.
So we're going to take all these together. We've already have moved and seconded. So we'll do roll call. Ralph?
Yes.
Oscar?
Yes.
Maria? TJ?
Yes.
Craig? Lori?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, so that is 7.
Congratulations, Carrie.
Great job, Carrie. It's coming back on consent. Yeah, you killed it. You killed it. We've already information item, general public comment, no board member items. Do you really?
Yeah. So, yeah, this Saturday from 1 to 4 at Webster Elementary, there will be a celebration of Philcott's life. It includes a number of people talking about various aspects of his life, from when he worked in Culver City as a teacher and ultimately the head of the teachers union there, to his legal time as a lawyer, to obviously his time in this district. And there will be a slideshow of things from all his life and movies and whatnot. Kids who grew up at his school or who are now in middle school and high school will be playing music. It should be lovely, should be heavily attended, so try to carpool if you're coming, because we think there's going to be maybe 1,000 people. And as I said, it's at Webster, and the community is very, very grateful for the district hosting it there.
Bow ties are appropriate?
Not bow ties, ties. Silly long ties. Wear silly long ties. He was famous for wearing a different silly long tie every day. Yeah.
Lori?
This coming Saturday from 1 to 4, the speechifying will be from 2 to 3.
And then after that, you can go to Samo High and you can watch the girls basketball team in the third round play San Clemente at 6 o'clock at Samo. Mm-hmm. And I think at the third round may be the semifinals. Yeah.
All right, we are adjourning the meeting tonight in memory of Catherine Coleman Gobble Johnson, who passed away late last month at the age of 101. She was an American mathematician whose calculations of orbital mechanics as a NASA employee were critical to the success of the first and subsequent U.S. crewed space flights. No. She was not one of our employees. During her 35-year career at NASA and its predecessor, she earned a reputation for mastering complex manual calculations and helped pioneer the use of computers to perform the tasks. The space agency noted her historical role as one of the first African-American women to work as a NASA scientist. Johnson's work included calculating trajectories, launch windows, and emergency return paths for Project Mercury spaceflights, including those for astronauts Alan Shepard, the first American in space, and John Glenn, the first American in orbit, and rendezvous paths for the Apollo lunar module and command module on flights to the moon. Her calculations were also essential to the beginning of the space shuttle program, and she worked on plans for a mission to Mars. In 2015, President Barack Obama awarded Johnson the Presidential Medal of Freedom. In 2016, she was presented the Silver Snoopy Award by NASA astronaut Leland D. Melvin and a NASA Group Achievement Award. She was portrayed by Taraji P. Henson as the lead character in the 2016 film Hidden Figures. In 2019, Johnson was awarded the Congressional Gold Medal. We adjourn in her memory and thank her for her contributions.
Wow.